We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel. And we're now preparing for further countermeasures to protect our interests and our businesses if negotiations fail. I know that many of you feel let down by our oldest ally. Yes, we must brace for the impact that this will inevitably have. Europe has everything it needs to make it through the storm. We are in this together.
And DW's Christine Mundwa joins us now from Brussels with an EU perspective on the US tariffs. Christine, we had European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen in our report earlier saying that the EU is ready to act. What can we expect?
Well, Barish, I'll start by saying that no one in Brussels is interested in an escalation. And so there is a huge effort to try and get to the negotiating table with the Washington administration so as to potentially even avoid these tariffs. But we do know that in the event that that fails, and we heard this from the Commission President this morning, Brussels will have to respond. And you have heard from the German Finance Minister, for example, this morning, and other capitals calling for a strong response. I'll remind you that on the shelf are about 28 billion worth of tariffs that were announced last month. Given that Washington announced 20% yesterday, that number, that 28 billion on US exports, is actually a very, very low number. Some estimates say it's only a tenth of what has been announced with this 20%. So Brussels does have some big guns. The question is, does it want to fire those guns just yet? If you look at the digital and the services sector, here there is a huge deficit in the favor of the United States, something to the tune of 100 billion. Think of all the tech companies where the US is effectively exporting to the European Union. And so if the EU were to target that, that would potentially have a devastating impact for US tech giants. But of course, that measure would almost receive a response from the United States and then leading us to that escalation that everybody here is trying to avoid. So there is a desperate attempt now, a flurry of activity. We know that various capitals are sending envoys to meet with the Trade Commissioner here in the European Union to try and work out the best way forward. But the sentiment here is, let's negotiate, let's try and reach some kind of an agreement. Failing that, we have to respond strongly.
And will these US tariffs affect European Union countries differently? And if so, who has the most to lose?
Absolutely. It is just the case that some are bigger than others, right? I think at the top of the head, you might think German cars, Italian and French luxury goods, designer brands, for example. But the overall story here is that doing business with the United States will become more costly, more expensive, and that is bad for everybody. So nobody is looking at it as who is worst affected than others, which is certainly always going to be the case. This has a universal impact, given that on a daily you have billions worth of trade between the European Union and the United States. All of this is at play, and everybody is adversely affected. It is going to hurt people on both sides. And that is why there's a desperate attempt, Birish, to try and reach some kind of a negotiation with the United States. It's not clear if there's an interest. There are some voices in Brussels saying the Trump administration does not appear to be signaling that it's interested in some kind of a negotiation. They have, however, said that if you respond, we will retaliate to that response.
DW's Christine Mundwa in Brussels. Thanks for that update. Meanwhile, 25% import tariffs on foreign-made cars have now gone into effect, and Murray Sina from DW's business desk is in the northern German city of Wolfsburg, which is where Volkswagen's headquarters are located. Murray, how will car makers like Volkswagen be affected?
Right, it's a sunny and bright day here at the headquarters of Volkswagen, but the outlook for Germany's biggest car maker just got a lot gloomier. Volkswagen had been on the United States as its only growth market because its market share in China has been shrinking, and now the United States market just got a lot more expensive for the car maker. So Volkswagen does have one big plant in Tennessee in the United States where it produces its most popular Volkswagen car in the US, the Atlas. So will be spared. Other most popular cars of Jetta, for example, will be hit by these massive tariffs and will become more expensive to export into the country. And then you also have Porsche, which is part of the Volkswagen Group, which doesn't have a single factory in the United States. So every Porsche that's sold in the United States will be hit by these tariffs, and Porsche sells every third car it makes to the US. So it's a very important market for the Volkswagen Group, but also for all other major German car makers like BMW and like Mercedes.
So how will these car makers react to these tariffs?
Right, Volkswagen, according The Journal has already announced to its dealers in the US that it will raise an import fees on all the cars that are affected by these tariffs, and that it will announce the exact price increases of its cars by mid-April. And that's really the question that German car makers will have to answer in the short run. How much are they raising their prices? Now, there's also talks that some German car makers might drop their cheaper models and no longer sell them in the US. For example, Mercedes produces some smaller SUVs that simply wouldn't be economically rational to sell in the United States with these high tariffs. So it could be that there is less supply in terms of models to the US. But the big question in the long term will be, will these tariffs lead to the desired effect, which is will German car makers relocate more factories to the United States? Experts say that isn't out of the question in the long run. It's definitely out of the question in the short run because it's incredibly costly to do that. CEO of Volkswagen Group, Oliver Blume, has already said you can't do this overnight. This will be a huge cost. So in the short run, there is this expectation that no big announcements will be made in regards to relocating to the United States.
Maricina from DW Business reporting from Wolfsburg. Thanks so much.